So the 2.1 is just finding slope. Remember, you do y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 to find slope. Then it asks you if they're parallel or perpendicular. Parallel means they have the same slope. Perpendicular means they have the negative reciprocal. Then you jump to 2.2. That is about graphing. So you just need the slope and the y-intercept for graphing. This x and y-intercepts is when it got a little tricky for people. So all of these equations are in standard form. Standard means ax plus by equals c, where you have x and y on the left side, then you have an integer on the right. And then a, b, and c are all integers, which just means that they're whole numbers. They're not fractions. So if you're wanting to find an x-intercept, if you're going to solve for an x-intercept, then you're going to set y equal to 0. Then if you want to find a y-intercept, you set x equal to 0. So if we look at number 11, to find the x-intercept, I'm going to set y equal to 0. So it would be x minus 2 times 0 equals 4. So x equals 4. I do want it written in an ordered pair. So if it's an x-intercept, then the ordered pair would be 4, 0. Then I do the same thing for a y-intercept. I'm going to set x equal to 0. So the equation would look like 0 minus 2y equals 4. So negative 2y equals 4. Divide by negative 2. Y equals negative 2. And the ordered pair would be 0, negative 2. Okay, jump down to number 15. It gives you a word problem where it says the body length y in inches of a walrus can be modeled by this equation. So here's my linear equation, where x is the calf's age in months. So then in part A, it asks me what the slope and the y-intercept represent in this graph. So first off, I want to decide what my slope is and what my y-intercept is. So my slope in this problem is what? 5. My y-intercept is 42. Good. So in the context of this problem, what it's saying is, so if y is my body length of the walrus, and then x is, why does it say walrus and calf? That's weird. We're going to just choose, this should be a walrus. Not two different animals here. And then x is going to be the walrus's age in months. So every time that you're increasing an x value, the length of the body is increasing by 5 inches. So that's kind of how to interpret the slope. So a nice little sentence, you could say, for each increase in 1 month, so for every increase in a month, the y value, or the body length, is going to increase by 5 inches.
Do you have to do like a full out sentence?
Mm-hmm. So basically every month the walrus gets 5 inches bigger. Which makes sense because if you replace x, if you put x equals 1, then x equals 2, x equals 3, it's getting bigger by 5 inches every single time. Then the y-intercept, if I were to interpret the y-intercept, it's when x equals 0, my y value is 42. So in the context of this problem, what does it mean for x to equal 0? What does that say about the problem? The walrus was just born. He was 0 months old. So when he was 0 months old, or she, the walrus was 42 inches long. So when walrus is 0 months or born, they are 42 inches. Then for part B, it says use the equation to predict or to estimate the body length that is 10 months old. So f of 10 would be 5 times 10 plus 42, which gives me 92 inches. Make sure that you put units in that. So when you are graphing an inequality, if you have a less than or a greater than sign, you're going to use a dashed line. If you have greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, you use a solid line. Then to determine where you shade, if you have less than or equal to, you're going to shade the region below the line, because it is less. Then if you have a greater than or equal to, you shade the region above the line. Sometimes if you have a line that's almost vertical, it gets a little tricky when you have a steep slope and you don't necessarily know which way to shade. So there's this test that you can do, and I'll show you how to use it in a minute, but it's called the 0-0 test. And basically you're going to test a point, you're going to test 0-0, so when x equals 0 and y equals 0, you're going to plug those into the inequality. If you get a true statement, so if you get something like 0 is greater than -2, that's true, then you're going to shade in the region of 0-0. So wherever 0-0 is, you're going to shade that region. If you get a false statement, so let's say you get 0 is less than -2, and that is false, then you shade the other side where 0-0 is not. So you shade the opposite. Which doesn't make a lot of sense now, but we're going to do an example and I'll show you what I mean by that. Okay, so let's look at number 4. We're going to do that one together. So first off, I have just a greater than, so does that mean it's going to be solid or dashed?
Say that again.
Dashed, because it's just a greater than, so that means that it's a dashed line. Secondly, I need to put it into slope-intercept form, which means I need it in the y equals form. So I'm going to move the 2x over. That gives me -6. Y is greater than -2x plus 12. I'm going to divide each side by a -6. What happens when I divide by a negative to the inequality? Switch the sign. Good. So I get y is less than -2 over -6 becomes 1/3 x minus 2. So here it is in slope-intercept form. So I'm going to put a point at -2, then up 1 over 3, up 1 over 3, go the opposite way, and it's a dashed line. So it is less than, and so that means that you shade below. But if you want to check yourself to make sure that shading below, so you would think since it's less than you shade below, but if I wanted to check to make sure, so here's my point 0-0 right here. And I'm going to test that point to see if it is a true statement or a false statement. Now you can either plug it in to the original, like the one that started out like this. Sometimes I find it's easier to plug in 0-0 there than it is into this equation, but it does not matter which one you plug it into because it's going to get you the same result as far as true or false. I'm going to plug it into the original, so that would mean 0 minus 0 is greater than 12. 0 is greater than 12. Is that true or false? False. So since it's false, that means I'm not going to shade where 0-0 is. I'm going to shade the opposite. So I'm going to shade where 0-0 is not, which would mean below. So if you want to check to see if you did the right thing, you do the 0-0 test. If it's true, you shade where 0-0 is. If it's not true, if it's false, then you shade where 0-0 is not. All right, so writing an equation of the line 2.3, we have two different types of forms. So we have, this is called slope-intercept form. That's all right, slope-intercept form. So if you're given a slope and a y-intercept, this is the one that you would want to use. It's easy to write an equation of a line if you have the slope and the y-intercept. Let's say you are given a slope and then an ordered pair or a point. Then you use point-slope form, which I'm going to show you how to use here in a minute. Then if you are given 2 points, so let's say it gives you 2 ordered pairs, you're going to have to find the slope first, then use the point-slope formula. So it's like a 2-step process. So we're going to do one of each of the last 2. I'm not going to show you how to give a slope and a y-intercept. So if we look at number 2, it says write an equation of a line that passes through the point 5, 4 and has a slope of -3. So here it's given me a slope and it's also given me a point. So you can automatically put it into point-slope form, where the formula is, and you do need to have this memorized, y minus y1, which is 4, equals, my slope m is -3, parenthesis, x minus 5, because my x1 is the 5. So what I put in, my y, my x, and then the -3 was the slope. If it does not specify, or I have not already told you so, you can leave it like this. However, for your homework, I do want you to simplify it into slope-intercept form, which would just mean, it's not hard, which would just mean that I distribute the -3, so y minus 4 equals -3x plus 15, and then I move the 4 over. If you want to do this in all in one step, you can, just be careful. So y equals -3x plus 19. So if we look at number 4, it gives us a point, and then it tells me that for A, it's parallel to this line. So what is the only piece of information that I need from that line? The -4, and that's the slope. So the slope is equal to -4. When you have something that's parallel, the slopes are what? The same. So for A, I'm gonna use that slope, which is -4, and I'm gonna use this ordered pair, my x1 and my y1, and then I'm gonna put it into point slope form. So that is y minus y1, so y minus 3 equals -4x plus 2, because it's minus a -2. Then you distribute, so y minus 3 equals -4, x minus 8, add the 3, something like this. Then for B, it says that it's perpendicular. So if my slope of the original is -4, what would my perpendicular slope be? 1/4, because you take the negative reciprocal. So if it's the original is -4, you flip and switch, so it becomes a positive 1/4. And I'm going to use the same ordered pair and put it in point slope form. So y minus 3, it's going to look identical to this one, except the -4 will change to be a positive 1/4. X plus 2. And I distribute plus 1/2. Then I add the 3 over. I want you to write it as a fraction. So if I were to make this 3 to have a denominator of 2, it would be 6/2 in proper fraction. So I'm going to add 6/2 to each side, so it would be plus 7/2. I want you to leave it like that as a fraction, not a decimal. Okay, the last one I want to look at is number 6. That is when you are given 2 points. So I'm given 2 points. The first thing that I need to solve for is the slope. So slope, I would take 10 plus 2 over 2 minus 5. which gives me 12 over negative 3, which reduces to negative 4. So step number 1, find the slope. Negative 4. Second step, I can use point slope form. I'm given 2 points, so you can just choose one. I normally choose the first one because, I don't know, I just do it first. But you can choose either 5, negative 2, or 2, 10. It would not matter. So then using the point slope formula would be like y plus 2 equals negative 4 x minus 5. And then step number 3 is optional. It depends on if the problem on the test tells you to put it into slope-intercept form. So then you would just distribute and then add or subtract the 2 over. But that's only if the question asks you to do so. Otherwise, you can just leave it in point slope. But I am asking you on the homework to do it in slope-intercept.